morning, everyone. Normally, I am able to see everybody in a room and connect with faces. All I have now is your profile picture or lack thereof and your names on my list. So there will be sessions or times in the workshop where I'll be able to draw on your questions and discussions. So we can also put some things into the chat if you have questions, and then we will get to that. But I'm excited to be teaching this session. So excited that I actually included a bonus session. I know it's Saturday morning. I know everybody's tired, but the bonus session is just a kind of an in-depth into what does it take to make a good fundraiser. You can stay for that, but it will be recorded if you'd like. So I'm going to start with our slides because there's a lot to cover, and it was very difficult for me to decide what I was actually going to put in because yeah, there's so much that I want to share. So let's get into it. Okay, so like me, on a Saturday morning, you are probably feeling this. Why is this not doing? Sorry. Okay. You're probably feeling this way on a Saturday morning, needing some coffee, feeling tired. And so I would encourage you to take some notes. I will try and make this a very engaging session. And if you are able to get just a few key points, it's going to help you to not just develop a fundraising organization or an NPO, but also to think about perhaps a business one day, because it really is based on an entrepreneurial approach. So thank you for those who did fill in your pre-questionnaire. Some of the expectations that you have, that you shared with me for the session, is to have a detailed understanding of the procedures when you want to start a fundraising project, and we'll definitely be covering that in today's session. There is someone who said, this course will give me the opportunity of achieving my career goals. If your career goal is to create an NPO or start a social enterprise, this is definitely going to help you cover that. Depends on what your specific career goal is. It will aid me in achieving a long-term goal, which is to be an entrepreneur, manage his business using sound principles. A lot of what I will be sharing, like I said, is very entrepreneurially based. So you should be able to glean some of that. Someone else said to learn effective fundraising, to how it can be done, what are the challenges, key elements, and why fundraising is important. And we'll definitely be covering those aspects today. Other expectations that we probably will not cover in today's session is to become a postdoctoral researcher. Unless you wanted to know about how to approach funding for research, then we will definitely cover that. Obtain the skills to work with big data. We probably won't cover that in this session as well. It's not related to the fundraising thing. So just temper your expectations if that was you. Learn a more nuanced understanding of security. I'm not sure what was meant by that, but the focus of today's session is really going to be, how do I create communication and support for a cause that I'm going to get myself behind. So someone had said to challenge my self-limiting beliefs and fears about asking for money, to learn how to raise funds in the most effective and creative way, how to build the right relationships in this regard, how to keep people accountable effectively, and to know some of the most common challenges to prepare for as a fundraiser. This is actually a really good synopsis of today's training. So if that was you, we will try and meet these expectations today. So these are the sections that we'll be covering. Like I said, it's a lot to put into 2 hours, but we will go through as much as we can. And you will have the recording for this, and you can always ask me questions in the chat, or also over email. I'll try and respond to them. So our first session is going to be looking at the parallels between fundraising and starting a business. Like Lennox said to you, I do have a lot of experience in fundraising. I worked at the Blood Service for about 3.5 years. I've done a lot of volunteer work in the MBO space. And for almost 10 years, I was focusing on bursary fundraising, for students who needed support, but also other projects as well. And now I have my own company. And so I've seen how my 10 years of working as a fundraiser, 15 years in total, has really helped me to actually develop a solid business model going forward. So there's a lot of amazing skills you can develop as a fundraiser. We're going to briefly look at how do we understand what our core beliefs are about money, because these subconscious things really affect the way that you go about in the world and actually how you engage with people around this issue. How to design a fundraising strategy, looking at some grant funding basics, and using storytelling to attract funding. Our bonus session is going to be a bit more into what does it take to be a good fundraiser. So you've heard enough about me. I don't have to go through this as well. You've got this in your communication earlier. Let's start with this. Fundraising is the gentle art of teaching the joy of giving. So in all the time that I've been a fundraiser, people have often said to me, Cheryl, I could never ask people for money. I don't want to be a beggar. And I always said to them, I don't see myself as a beggar asking for money. I see myself as a connector. I know people who need resources, and I'm encountering people who have these resources and have a desire to actually connect to the people who need them. So in a way, instead of seeing myself as a beggar, I see myself as a matchmaker, which is a much more fun approach. I see myself as a matchmaker of matching need and opportunity with available resources. And in my time as a fundraiser, I've met amazing, incredible people who really want to give back, who have really solid philanthropic and altruistic behaviors. And it's always great to be around positive people who actually want to make a difference. So in section 1, we're going to look at what are the parallels between fundraising and starting a business. Okay. Now, I've also seen that you have some of the people that have responded on the session have some amazing ideas. One of the questions I asked you was, what impact would you like to make in the world? And some of you said development through education, changing people's lives for the better. Become an enabler and a problem solver. I want to help people in need. I want to save children from abuse and hunger. Help those who are less fortunate. All of you on this call today are change agents. And that's really what fundraisers are. This is why you are studying. This is why you are empowering yourself with knowledge to be able to make change in the world. Okay? So it all starts with a great idea to change the world. And there are some fundamentals when you're either putting together a business or an NGO. So I'm going to use an example, a South African example that I think is amazing. You may or may not know about it. It's called the Clothing Bank. This organization was started by 2 women who were working within the FMCG industry. One of them was actually working at Woolworths. And what she saw was the incredible wasting of clothing that was not being sold and it wasn't being recycled effectively. And she realized that there could be a potential here to empower women who are otherwise not economically enabled and who are struggling in relationships that have a lot of domestic violence, abusive relationships, and they just really are stuck. And they don't know how to change their lives. The issue of domestic violence is also something I'm very passionate about. So I love how someone has adopted an entrepreneurial approach to actually solving this problem. So what the Clothing Bank does is it takes all of the resources that are going to be recycled or not used from organizations like Pick and Pay and Checkers and things like that, and they are donated to the company, and then they are sold to women who will then resell these clothing items in their communities. But they also have a 2-year training program that they go into about how to run a business, how to create a demand for your products, about how to develop a pricing model around this. So they're actually enabling small businesses through this purpose. So as we go through these 5 pointers, I want you to please write down your idea of how you want to impact the world. And then I want you to start putting down answers to these questions as we go through it. So with a clothing bank, for example, they wanted to solve the problem of domestic violence and abuse in communities via their organization. So what problem are you trying to solve? I want you to take just a second to think about it and write down what problem you're trying to solve. Someone had said here, I want to build a youth center to change lives of youth for the better. The center will be a place where they can get assistance with applications for jobs and tertiary studies. So that's an amazing, amazing initiative. So write down what problem you want to solve. Okay. Then we have to talk about passion. Because if you're not passionate about the cause that you want to get behind or the problem you're trying to solve, nobody's going to care if you don't care. So one of the ladies here, Tracy, this is one of the founders, she says, integrity is the principle that guides everything I do. Integrity to me means having the courage to speak the truth and aligning what I say, think, and do. So, you know, she could have just been comfortable in her own little world and taken care of herself, but she saw a problem, she saw a potential solution, and then she put an action to it. And the reason why people are supporting this, potential donors and customers, is because she's invested in it. So people are going to be more likely to invest if they can see that you are passionate, that you care about it, and that they should too. So why would people be persuaded by your passion? I want you to write that down. Think about, am I really passionate about this cause? If you're not, then maybe you should find a cause that you can be passionate about, because that is something that you cannot fake. So why would people be persuaded by your passion? Okay. Now we work on to something very important, and it's a plan. So what is my plan around taking this dream that I have, this idea, and turning it into action? How can I bring this to bear in the real world? So you can see that the clothing bank has a very strong system. They recruit potential business owners, they train them, they teach them about how to volunteer, they get people to come in and volunteer, they go into training, coaching, mentoring, and motivating, and then they build sustainable businesses. So what is your plan? How are you going to take your idea? Let's just take this youth center, for example. How are you going to make that a reality? So it doesn't have to be a full plan, obviously, but I want you to just write down what would be the major outline of my plan to bring that into the real world. I'll give you just 30 seconds to write that down. Okay, then we're looking at a product or a service. So if you are a business, you'd either be selling a product or a service. If you are an NPO, you are going to be, your product would be, this is the impact that we are going to be making. So if you look at the clothing bank example, there's an input here of how they actually get connected to the retail partners. This is how they actually sort the product. So the product is actually clothing that's been recycled and training that's been developed. So this is their key products or services, right? So think about what product or service will you be creating? And remember, this has to be clear enough for people to understand what it is you're doing, because if it's not clear to you, it will not be clear to other people. So what product or service will you be creating? If you look at the youth center example, the product or service there would be training of young people so that they could become viable members of society and participate in the economy. So those are the kind of thinking we have to do around how do we structure this. And then most importantly is the profit or the impact. So if you were starting a business is going to make money. Even if you have an NPO, you need money to make this impact. So what will you actually need to make this impact? For example, the clothing bank that we're looking at, they have traders that earn 4,000 Rand a month as a minimum, and this is how they've been able to build a platform where they can eradicate poverty. And they show where they're actually making this impact, where the different centers are, and how many people that they're actually being affected by the different programs. So do you see how clear the communication is in terms of how people can get involved? They're very transparent. They're showing where the impact's actually happening. So I want you to think about, how much money do you need to achieve the desired impact? Often when we think about fundraising, we think, okay, let me just apply for a 10 million rand grant. But we haven't thought about, do I need 10 million? What do I actually need? And how long do I need this money for? How will this money be spent? So we have to start thinking about the actual crux of what it is that we are wanting to get to. So how much money do I need to achieve the desired impact? How much money would you need to start a youth center? Is it going to be virtual? Is it going to be an actual physical building? How will you impact people? Do you need computer labs? What kind of resources do you require? Will you be paying people? Will you be using volunteers in the organization? What are your overheads? And how will you build it sustainably over time? So these are some common pitfalls when it comes to fundraising, and I've heard this many, many times. Once people have an organization, they might maybe register the organization or just create a website and think, well, people should give this, they should give money to this cause because it's important. Or a business owner will say, but this product is great, people should buy this, right? Or I created the website, so I don't know why people don't know about this, you know? Or people say, yes, people seem interested when I talk to them about it, but no one is actually donating or buying the product. So this is a very passive approach. Just because you have a good idea doesn't mean that people are going to flock to you to buy the idea and support the idea. It is your responsibility to create something that's compelling, that you have to build something that people can be able to plug into and support. So the active approach to fundraising or starting a business is you have to think entrepreneurially. Okay, so you have an idea. That's great. The question is, so what? Many people have ideas. You know, I had an idea to start Whole Person Academy because I saw that even though people are in tertiary education, they don't have the required work and life skills when they actually get into the workplace. And so, you know, people will think, well, okay, so what is it? Is that my problem to solve? You want to be able to create your organization in a way that you are finding the problems that people want to help to solve. And that's why entrepreneurially thinking will help you to discover, how are the ways that I can build and engage this instead of just the conventional approaches. You also want to develop a long-term view. It's not going to be easy. Let's get this settled from the beginning. Anything worth achieving is never easy, but you want to develop a long-term goal to say, okay, year one, what can we do? If you are still in your postgrad studies, you don't have all the time to dedicate to it. Maybe you only have 2 hours a week to dedicate to building this idea. So what can you do with the 2 hours? Maybe later on you have more time, so then you can build it from there, but be realistic and develop a long-term approach. And also, if you want to change the world, like many of you do, you can't do it on your own. Believe me, I've tried. So you want to collaborate with like-minded people. This person who wants to build a youth center, there's probably many other people, perhaps in your student group, but beyond that, who also have the same ideas to impact the youth. So how are you collaborating and connecting with like-minded people? Because you're going to need to build your network when it comes to this. So fundamentally, for this first session, which has taken about 20 minutes to go through, getting people to part with their money involves relationship building, when you have to couple that with some strategic sales techniques. Starting a business, creating an MPO is difficult, but the impact that you can have with it is worth it. So I'm going to stop the presentation just for a second and try and get some feedback so I can actually make sure that everyone's still connected and that we are all here. And just get 1 or 2 comments. I'm going to maybe pick on some people. Don Kruger, are you there? You can unmute your mic, Don.
Yes, hello.
Hi, Don. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Good, man. So from the first part of the presentation, what has stood out for you the most?
The fact that you have to be passionate about the endeavor for which you want to raise funds.
Tell us a bit about your endeavor that you're thinking about.
Mine would be mental health
Mm-hmm.
and bringing perhaps untraditional methods of therapy into societal norms, which new science is showing actually benefits people with mental health disorders, and maybe campaigning to raise money for that type of resolve.
That is an amazing initiative. Thank you, Don. Especially with young people, ages 15 to 24, there's an increase in depression at university as well. So that is a great initiative. Anyone else would like to comment? I'm going to leave a volunteer space open. Unmute your mic and just share something that stood out for you in this first part.
Hello.
Hi, who's speaking?
Yes, this is Dennis.
Hi, Dennis. Tell us.
Yes. What stood out most for me is the fact that you said it's important to partner with like-minded people. I think strategic partnerships are very important in business. You can't survive on your own or it alone. And I think the art of finding like-minded people and capitalizing on both of your passions to come together and achieve something even greater is very important in business or any initiative for that matter.
Thank you, Dennis. Yes, I agree. It's definitely vital to build your networks and to find these collaborative support systems, especially when you're going to be applying for grants and foundations. There's so much that you don't know yet. So Dennis, how are you planning on building these networks and these collaborations with like-minded people? What is your plan to do that?
Right now, my plan is mostly in infrastructure, for example, real estate development, passionate about building the infrastructure that businesses need that is lacking in most developing nations. How I'm building these networks is I mostly take time to look out for who is doing what and how I can reach them. For example, at the beginning of this year, I started a business venture and I had to reach out to different people to sell my idea to them, and I was basically looking for funding, 60% of what I needed. So, and I was able to actually get someone to come through. So I think it's just about you start with who you know, the people that you think might help, and then go beyond that if that doesn't work. So I looked at my network and I was lucky enough to get the funding that I wanted within that network.
That's amazing. Thank you, Dennis. So everyone on this call, reach out to Dennis. He knows some things about this. Dennis, I'm going to mute your mic for a second, okay? Yeah. So, for example, what Dennis was able to do was reach out to people that he knew in his network and already has some funding for his business. So don't be scared to chat to people in your peer group. I know that there is a UP Alumni Connect platform where you can actually engage with alumni, and alumni of UP, for example, or whichever university you're at. I'm not sure if everyone is at UP today. But alumni can be a great resource that you can leverage off of, especially because they want to be able to work with people in the industry. They have studied with you. There already is some commonality. So make use of that. Find out what people are doing. Make sure you get in touch with Dennis and ask him, how did he do it? Ask questions. Be curious, because that's going to really help you as you're going forward. Okay, so we're going to quickly go into our next the next aspect of it. Let me go back to my presentation. Thank you to everybody who has contributed to the questions. So now, this is something we really have to talk about, because in our financial literacy training that we do with university students, we have to firstly cover core beliefs before we can actually change anything around financial behaviors. And this is important because whatever you focus on is amplified. Okay, so whatever you are believing about money, whatever you're believing about rich people, whatever you are currently believing about your ability to work with money is going to affect how you either get a job and have a salary, or start a business and work with money in the business, or the way that you actually fundraise. What was remarkable for me in my experience as a fundraiser, even at UP, for example, was that I was able to raise 40 million rand in bursary funding. So when you first actually start raising money, it's sometimes maybe easier to manage this for someone else than for yourself. But once you start managing money for someone else or for a cause, it definitely has a direct correlation to how you're managing money in your own personal life. So there's a lot of growth to be had in this space. Essentially, we have a scarcity mindset or an abundance mindset. It can also be thought about as a growth mindset or a fixed mindset, and you may or may not have come across these concepts already. A scarcity mindset has a worldview that the world is running out of resources and everything is scarce. And so, there's only so much of the pie to be had, and the pie is quickly diminishing. Okay, so if somebody else does well, if somebody else is rich or wealthier, it means that they're taking away from the person who doesn't have something. They focus on depletion, looking at natural resources that are being depleted and not being replaced. They also have the sense of unfairness, or looking at the world as being, it's unfair for someone to have more than someone else does. And this can affect the way that you fundraise or actually start a business, because you might be actually starting out with a sense of underlying resentment. And you need to actually maybe reflect on that and think about that, because if you are going to be asking someone for money and you're sitting across the table from them or trying to make an appeal to them, and you think you shouldn't have what you have, that expectation or that thought or that subconscious resentment is going to come across in the way that you communicate. Have you ever tried to have a conversation with someone that you know that you don't like? You can tell it's fake. You can tell it's forced, right? So remember, donors are people. You are people as well. So you have to be human all the time, and think about what are some of the limiting mindsets that I have when it comes to actually asking for money. Obviously, with Corona, there's, massive job losses, and there's a lot of economic results and consequences that have come about it. But it's not the first time that the world has gone through something difficult. There's not the first time that there's been financial scarcity perceived. So as an entrepreneur, you have to adopt an abundance mindset, and it often takes practice, because if you focus on what's happening all the time, it can get very easy to be negative, and it can get very easy to be discouraged. You could get very easy to be despondent about it. But an abundance mindset views things differently. The worldview that someone with an abundance mindset has is that everything important is getting bigger and better as a result of capabilities that makes things faster, easier, and cheaper. So some people have looked at what's been happening with the coronavirus and saw opportunities. I don't know how you feel about this, but Jeff Bezos has gotten richer because of Corona and because of Amazon. So there are systems and tools that you can actually use to find and build opportunities. They look at ingenuity. There's increasing opportunities, creating new practical solutions, and being useful in society. Okay, so those businesses that have been able to pivot in this time, change their services, adapt quickly, they've been able to stay open, stay sustainable, and some of them have even been able to keep making a profit. So an abundance mindset always looks for the opportunity despite the obstacles. So I want you to write down in your notes, what is my current mindset? Am I operating from a scarcity or an abundance mindset? And you can be honest here because no one's going to look at your answers. This is just for you. The second question is, what are my current beliefs about asking for financial support for a cause I believe in? So do I believe in this cause enough that I want to ask people to partner with me on this project? Do I believe that people are going to say no or yes? And the third question is, do I tend to look for opportunities or create them? And this can be a bit of a tricky, a weird question, but yes, you will look for opportunities, but you also need to think about, how do I create opportunities to be able to access the funding and support that I need? So let's take a quick break and we will come back in about 2 minutes. Just take a breather, coffee break, and we'll be back in 2 minutes. Okay, everyone, that was a quick break just to go to the bathroom or grab another cup of coffee. And now we're getting into the crux of the stuff. This is stuff that has taken me years to learn. So I'm going to slow down a bit and really get into the heart of it. And then we'll also stop and just get some questions if you need any questions to clarify and ask a bit more. So in order to build a fundraising strategy, you need to have a clear vision, which is what we covered in the previous session. Why do I want to start this organization? Or why do I want to build something around this cause? What is my plan? How will I execute it? How will I communicate that? So a clear vision around what is it that you want to achieve. And then you have to have a flexible plan, because as you know, you never know what life's going to bring. 2020 is a year that no one could have predicted. And so the plan should be solid but flexible. And now we also need to think about, who am I going to be targeting? So, for example, the youth center that the person who shared wants to start, they will not be able to just target everybody, because this is the biggest thing around fundraising, is that the targets are often too broad. Who should give to this cause? Well, everybody should. You know, if I was raising money for perhaps an abuse center for women who have been exposed to abuse, and a kind of safe haven, not everybody is going to support that. The people that would be more likely to support something like that would be those who have either experienced abuse in their lifetime, or witnessed abuse as a child, or have been directly impacted by that. When I was at the blood service, for example, the people that were donors who were giving their blood were people that either their family member was saved by a unit of blood or blood product, or they themselves were saved by it. And so they had a very personal connection. They had a reason why this is important. And I often would say that getting people to give blood is very similar to getting people to give money, because you're giving off yourself, right? And giving blood is something you have to leave your normal day. You have to sit down. It's very intrusive. You have to get a needle in your arm. People are scared of needles. So who are the people who would give blood, for example? There'll be a certain sector, a group of people that will be your key targets. And it'll take a while to maybe refine that through lots of different ways that you can test that. But just remember that you want to be able to hone in on who your target is each time. You also want to build strong storytelling around. Sorry, I need some water. You want to build strong storytelling around your cause. People don't give rationally, they give emotionally. So when we take a break, I'm going to ask the group just some questions around when last they've asked for money or had to influence someone. And if you're trying to influence someone to take an action, to give something of themselves, you often have to relate to them by their hearts, not their head. So you want to make sure that your storytelling is compelling when you are developing a plan. It will take time and patience. When you're starting out on your fundraising endeavors, you have to start at the base level and slowly work yourself up. And often it takes a lot longer than you thought, a lot more effort than you maybe initially envisioned. The same thing with starting a business. And you also have to expand your networks. You can't do it alone. As Dennis was sharing, this is how he was able to get support for his business. So when it comes to fundraising, this is the biggest challenge that people have, is actually asking for money. And there's many reasons around this. It could be cultural reasons that, you know, it's not normal to talk about money, or you have this fear that people are going to say no. And yes, there's a 50% chance that people are going to say no, but there's also a 50% chance of a yes. So I want to give you an example of just how this can work out. So specific scenarios from donor interactions that I've had. There was a corporate company that would give money for bursaries every year, and so I received that lead from my manager at the time, and she said, well, they normally give money for bursaries. You can send them a list of students who need support. And so I looked at what the list that was given to me, and it was about almost R1 million, because this company would often give money to students to pay off their outstanding debt. And so I sent off this ask to this donor for R1 million. And after I sent the email, my manager said to me, oh, they normally only give around 300,000 Rand. So I think they're only going to get about 300,000 Rand. And I had already made the ask. And, you know, if they couldn't give me the full R1 million, then that was fine. So they finally came back and they said, well, we can't give you R1,000,000, but we can give you 800,000 Rand. And so I've learned that it's always better to ask, because you have to take every shot that you're given. You know, if you make 10 asks and only 3 people give, you've got those 3 people. But if you don't make any asks, you don't get anything at all. Same thing with the business. If you never knock on people's doors or make the pitch or send a proposal or check in and see if they actually need the support, how will you know? So this is why I say you have to adopt an entrepreneurial approach. And entrepreneurs are always looking for the next opportunity. And they are able to take a no without letting that be the ultimate reason to stop. Not that entrepreneurs are foolproof or that they don't feel the knocks, but they keep looking at the opportunity. Again, we're talking about the abundance mindset, right? So this is something very important to understand. And this is your donor pyramid. Now, when we think about fundraising, or even starting a business, often we perhaps have this thought that if we just get the one big client or the one big donor or the one big grant, that's all we have to do. But there's a danger in putting all of your eggs in one basket, as the saying goes. So generally, with any donor pyramid, you're looking at a base of occasional donors or event participants. Now, this is, for example, people giving you smaller amounts of money, but there are many people giving you smaller amounts of money. So within universities, they would have this perhaps as being people who give to the annual fund. So they would make appeals to alumni. Maybe you already have received some of these appeals as postgraduate students to support the university by giving small amounts of money, either like 100 Rand or 50 Rand, or kind of building from there. So you building a kind of bigger base of people who do that. Event participants can be related to getting donors for peer-to-peer fundraising. So while at Salombas University, I helped to start the Move for Food campaign. And with the Move for Food campaign, it was people who were alumni and current students and staff members, and they would either participate in the Sunday Marathon or the cycle tour. So any kind of sporting event. And then they would go into, for example, Give and Gain and do peer-to-peer fundraising. So I would then basically, as a staff member of a university, sign up to the sporting events and get people in my network to support my page. And in that way, I was able to raise about 5,000 Rand as a personal fundraiser. And then we had many students and alumni participating. The VC as well of Stellenbosch University also ran the marathon, and he also cycled in many cycle tours. So that's an amazing way for you to build a broad base of funders. And these people are really your early adopters. They're also passionate. They might not be able to give you the 10 million grant, obviously, but their support and their voice and their network helps to build your visibility of your cause. And so this is something that you want to really think about. How do I build a large base of donors? Never ever underestimate the power of the individual donor. Yes, it's a lot of work, but eventually these smaller donors or individual donors from this group, they evolves your next level of donors. There might be people who have businesses or who are in positions of influence in the organization, and maybe they started out raising money for this cause they believe in, for a marathon that they were already going to run. And because they had good service, they had a good experience with this organization, they now become your cause champions. And they were able to influence CSI budgets in the organization, and now you have more corporate donors. So again, we come back to, how are you building supporters of your cause, of your organization? Even if you have a business, how are you treating your customers so that they are able to become so passionate about what they've received and what they've been able to be part of, that they become ambassadors for your brand? So those are your individual donors, and I wish I had more time to talk about this because I could talk about peer-to-peer fundraising in a whole different separate session. Then we have your recurring and annual donors. So these could be your corporate donors, for example, who have specific requirements or legal requirements around giving, perhaps bursaries, CSI, so the person who wanted to start the youth center, they would perhaps approach corporates in their country or in their region and say, I want to start this youth center in this area, especially mines. Mines have to spend money within the areas of where they are based. And so these could become your annual donors who give you a specific set amount every year. And you also want to build this group of people because this is how you can start budgeting for certain things that you have, right? So if you know a corporate donor gives you 10,000 Rand every year, and you know that you have like 500 individual donors giving you a set amount, now you're starting to build a kind of income pipeline so that you can plan your activities for more than just month to month. And then we have the major donors. This is your top pyramid. And most organizations make this mistake where they spend all of their energies trying to attract and retain this major donor. And it often ends up in the demise of the organization. There was this one NGO in South Africa, it was called Noah's Ark. They did amazing work with abandoned children. But they had to close their doors after 5 years of operation because their international funder changed their focus and they hadn't built in this base, right? So they had to close their doors. It wasn't a COVID-related closure. I also know of an entrepreneur who had this program to do dance therapy in schools, and she had a major corporate funder, and this was their CSI money. And so for 5 years, she ran this amazing program, and she was able to get an actual footprint and do amazing work. And then within one phone call, they changed their focus as well of their CSI spend, and she lost her major donor, her major funder, had not built up the space, and also had to close the organization. So I'm really stressing this point because you have to be so clear from the beginning on building a large base of support, building multiple streams of revenue, multiple streams of funding. Because if you don't do that, then you're going to be in danger of actually having to close up within 2 or 3 years if you lose your major donor. Something that you can also think about when we struggle with asking for money. I love this quote by Henry Rousseau. It says, fundraisers should use pride, not apology, when asking for a gift for charity that is doing good work. So I hate this concept of fundraisers being professional beggars. We are not begging for money. We are soliciting support for causes that we believe in. And that's the mindset that I want to try and inspire you to have. So let's think about what is our donor mix, okay? It's very similar to what I showed you just now, which is this funding pyramid here. I'm just trying to break it down a bit more so that you get a clearer sense of what I mean by that. So you have your individual donors. These could be, if you're working at at university, these are your alumni, or it's people that you've been able to raise partnership with, like Dennis has, people who believe in the cause or who have been affected by, for example, receiving a blood donation unit, and now they actually are supporters of this specific cause. So individual people are very important. You want to build this wide and build as many of these as you can. Government support. So in South Africa, we have CETAs that have specific funding mandates around skills development. They could be parastatals, any kind of government organization that has requirements for funding support. Corporate donors, but these also can be fickle depending on how your relationship is within the network and how you are building this. I had to use this picture. I know it's maybe not the right PC one, but your high net worth donors, this is kind of how we see them. Old white guys with money, right? And they're not all that way anymore. But high net worth donors, they're not actually I want to say you have to maybe just expand your view on this, because they might not always look the way you think they do. I went to a donor who wanted to support bursary students at the university. So I went to his office and he spoke to me about 2 hours about his personal background and history. And eventually he said, oh, and I want to give 2.5 million as an endowment fund for bursaries at the university. So if I had judged the book by the cover, he didn't wear any fancy clothing. His office wasn't like, amazing. There was some rain damage that happened earlier. So if I had gone in there with this guy doesn't have money, I would have not been able to get that support for bursary students at UP. So yeah, don't judge a book by its cover when it comes to high net worth donors. Foundations and trusts, this is something we can also look a little bit into if we have more time, but they're looking at how do we make a scalable impact over time in different societies. So there's those as well as grants. So depending on what you're wanting to achieve, you will have to build up a donor mix based on these donor groups. And then we will have time for questions, guys. I know it's a lot at the moment. We'll go into some good question time just now, but your donor cycle. Okay, this is how you're cultivating your donors. This is how you will be cultivating clients in your business. The first thing would be to identify who are your potential donors. So from the organization that you're planning to create or business you plan to create, you're going to write down who are my target groups. Okay. And then you're going to go into this step, which is determine if the individual or organization is a viable prospect. So all this means is you are going to find out, do they have the money to support, and will they support? And often this is where we can get stuck, because especially if you are a business and you go to an organization and you think that there could be some kind of synergy, but you realize that there's a mismatch. You can waste a lot of time trying to convince them that they should be supporting this. If somebody tells you, we don't have budget for this, please believe them and walk away. Don't waste time trying to convince them that they should give you money for this cause, because there are other people who will support and who do have the budget for that. And so you can always come back to this customer or this potential prospect a bit later. It takes 7 attempts or 7 interactions with a potential customer to actually make a sale. And I've seen how it's the same and similar kind of approach when it comes to a donor. There's 7 contact points that you kind of build with a potential donor for them to actually give. So this is also what I think we sometimes get frustrated about, disappointed, or don't understand, that people might not give you money the first time you ask them for money, but you are building a relationship. The key thing here is to not treat people and donors or even customers as if they are a cash till, right? They're not just money dispensers. They are people who have interests, who want to be part of something important. And so your role, your job, the work that you have to do is building this relationship, building this synergy, having this conversation, inviting them in. Even when you are going to be building potential customers, there might be some people that kind of draw out the process. You might actually be meeting with them 6, 7, 8 times before you actually make a sale. Some of them you will maybe meet the first time or second time, and then also you're able to get the sale. So treat each donor and each customer, everyone's going to be different. So you have to just be able to adapt to that. So cultivation is simply moving the prospect towards the solicitation, which means the ask. So if you realize, okay, they do have money and they have an interest in supporting you, how can we give them more information? How can we inspire them? How can we bring them closer to the work that we're doing so that they feel more inspired to give? The solicitation is where you actually make the ask, where you do the 50-50%. Okay, I'm going to ask you for this, and if you say no, that's fine. Often when they say no, it could be a no for now and not forever. Something you want to read for those who love to do extra research is a book by Zig Ziglar called The Art of the Sale, or he has amazing stuff around sales. You want to be able to build sales strategies into your asking. And then this is a very important aspect of stewardship. So once you get the money, don't just be the person that takes the money and walks away. Because when you go back to the donor and ask them again for money, they're not going to give you money because you weren't actually taking care of the relationship afterwards. So here is a very important part, because you want to update them on the progress of the impact. You want to thank them. People forget to thank donors. It's weird. Make sure that they feel appreciated, that they feel the gratitude for the gift. Recognize the donor on the use and impact of the gift. Show them that the money that they've invested has actually gone to the impact that you were trying to make. Because if you don't show them that loop, then there's going to be a breakdown of trust, and they will not want to give money again because they haven't seen where their money has gone. So this donor cultivation cycle, this is kind of where you're going to be living, essentially, in your fundraising life. There's many tools that you can use to kind of build this. You can, depending on how your scale of your organization, you might have to develop different systems where you keep track of everything so you don't forget to steward them well. The same element of building up donors and kind of building a regular donor base is similar to having repeat clients, right? It takes more time to get new donors than it does to keep the ones that you have. So once you have a donation, once you have a donor, make sure that they stay in the loop. Make sure you keep building that relationship, because they will be able to expand their networks and get more opportunities. So you want to be able to have a good plan around how you are retaining your donors. Again, the dangers of a single source income. I gave you those two examples of a business as well as a NPO that basically had to close down because they depended on a single source of income. It limits the scope of your organization because often you change what you're wanting to do because of what the donor wants you to do. Like I said, they've closed down doors because of the loss of a major funder, so you want to try and avoid that from the beginning. If there's no contingency in place, you place the organization at risk, and you also limit the potential of other donors to give. So these are all aspects to think about when you are looking at how to develop your donor cycle. Also, to emphasize stewardship, I like this quote by Karen Osborne, that stewardship at its best engages donors with the impact and outcomes of their investments of time, wisdom, expertise, connections, and money. So think about your donors as your customers, as partners in your endeavor. They're not just people that you are there to enable you to do this in isolation. They are going to be partnering with you, so think of them as part of your team. So I want to give you all 5 minutes to do this exercise before we go into questions, and I think we should go into questions because I'm sure there's a lot of questions at the moment around what I've just shared. For your organization or what you're trying to build, who is my primary donor target? Write that down. Is it high net worth individuals? Is it trust and foundations? Is it individuals? Who is your primary donor target? Number 2, what is my ideal fundraising mix? So who else do I need to bring into my donor pyramid? What factors do I need to consider? So obviously in the current climate, who you're asking for support or money might not be able to actually give you the support right now because most funding has shifted into COVID-related needs. So maybe the timing is not great right now. Maybe you can try again next year. What opportunities are available? How can I build my network, for example? Have I even tried the UP Alumni Connect platform? Have I reached out enough to people? What constraints do I need to consider? These are time constraints, resource constraints. And from that, think about what support will I need? So I'm going to give you just another 2 minutes to write these answers down, and then we'll go into a quick time of some questions. Okay, guys, now it's time for your questions. You can either, I think the best thing to do will be to put your question into the chat. Then I can answer it, because the question you have might be something that other people also have as well. Any questions around what I've been sharing just now? Michael George, are you there? Are you there, Michael? Okay, we've got a question. Would you say it is better to target within your country or look for donors outside your country, or have a mix? Okay, so thank you for your question. I'm going to say that when you're considering what it is you're trying to achieve, say for example, the youth center funding. If you're wanting to create a funding program for the youth center, you would firstly look for donors within the country, because you're more likely to find people that can support and understand the needs of young people within their community in the context of a national donor mix. But also what you want to maybe do is look for international funding around youth development. So when you're creating your plan for how you build your donor mix of your donor pyramid, you first start with your national donors. International donors will always look for evidence that you already have support from local funders and your local network. And that's because they want to be able to support things that are sustainable, something that's actually making a real impact. And if you can connect to other youth centers, for example, in your province, or in your region, or in a subsection of a continent, they're more likely to support that, because what international funders are looking at is how to build systemic change. So they're looking at more of the macro context. So it would depend on what it is you're trying to achieve, and also what your target is. If you have a target of 500,000 to keep it sustainable, you might be able to get that from local donor support. If you're looking at 5 million or 15 million, then you probably need to look at international funders to help you to meet that target. Have I answered your question?
Yes, I just have a follow-up question.
Yes, go for it. Yeah, please. This is our question and answer session time.
Yes. So when you're approaching donors most of the time, what do they usually look for? Do they want someone who's got a very good plan on paper, who's got, what do they look for exactly? That would usually convince them that you're worth funding.
Okay, that is a very good follow-up question. So what are donors looking for? It's the same thing that a funder would look for if you're starting a business, for example. So firstly, do you have a clear plan, right? They're going to look at the individual. Why should I support, is it Yamkela? Am I saying it correctly?
Yes, it's Yamgela.
Yamgela, right? Or why should I support you? You know, they're going to look at what evidence that you have. They're going to look at, are you actually investing in this? How much money are you putting into it? If you can't put money into it yourself, what are you actually investing into it? They're going to look at who have you collaborated with? What is your expertise in this space? So the same way that people would kind of interrogate someone's business plan, they would also interrogate the kind of funding plan. So it does take a while to maybe get that initial donor, that initial support, but once you have that, you can slowly build from there. And that's why never ever ignore the individual donor mix. So Yamkela, let me ask you, what is your idea? Let's actually interrogate that a bit.
So basically, I'm from the Kingdom of Eswatini. And my experience living in Hatfield, I saw this sports center next to Hatfield Square. It's called Urban Soccer. So I noticed that back at home, I have never seen such facilities where young people can come in and engage in sporting activities, especially soccer.
Yeah.
I thought of something like that within the capital of Swaziland, where there'll be this area, you have the small pitches, you can even host tournaments to just have the kids go and keep fit and engage.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you, are you passionate about sport? Do you play soccer?
I am, been, and I've represented my country at some point.
Okay, brilliant. So now you see, here you are finding out how can I sell the story? Because this is something we have to understand in our modern world, is that people buy you as much as they buy the idea. Okay, so the very fact that you have represented your country, that you are a sporting enthusiast, you want to do something and take it back to this community, those are really some key passion things you've got, right? So the way that you would actually more likely be able to get support is people that know you in the space that you're in, fellow sports enthusiasts. If you say, listen, I want to create this sports center, this is what I'm trying to do, would you be willing to support that? Now, you obviously would need to create a really strong plan around this. So will you be able to get a building that you can hire, rent out, or are you going to build it from scratch? That might be, you know, maybe a longer term goal. Perhaps your initial goal would be to have a sporting clinic that runs at schools as a start, right? So you want to build up this scalability of this organization, of this idea. So there you can say, well, we need to get kits for these 10 students. So you want to be able to tell the story around this very, very in a very compelling way. And you must be clear in what you're asking for. So let's say you want to start this sporting clinic with the goal to one day have a center. You might be able to say to people who are in your team, like, hey guys, I want to start this sporting clinic back home. I've identified a school. There's 10 guys who want to play soccer. I'm going to be coaching them. I'm going to be volunteering. The cost of the kits are 1,500 Rand. We have 10 of them, so we've got 15,000 Rand. I can do one at the moment. I need 9 other people to help support and to buy these kits for people. So you have to be very clear on what you're asking for. Build something that people can actually get behind, and then show them how you are getting behind it. And then you can build your plan from there. Like I said, a long-term view. Then once you actually get that first amount of support, you can even perhaps create a sporting game or a sporting match where you are raising funds for this initiative. So you get your friends to kind of support, and you're building up your first ask, which is 15,000 Rand. You have that amount. You go to Swaziland, you run this clinic, you make sure you take photographs, you show the impact of the kids getting their sporting kits, you take video, you show the story, and then from there you build your next ask. So it's all about, how do I actually create this project that people can get behind it? And you have to be the forerunner, the champion in this instance for that. Is that helpful?
Very much. Thank you so much.
Okay. If you want to chat to me a bit more about it, you have my email, or I'll send you my email address and we can just chat about it a bit more. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Another question. I'd like to know if there's a rule around the question, who else have you approached, when asked by a donor you're talking to. Nokabile, can I maybe just get more information about the question? You can unmute and just give me some more clarity about this one.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hi. What do you mean by this?
Okay,
Question.
normally you find that the donor that you are approaching, ask if there's anyone else that you have approached for the same donation that you're asking for. So really, when I get to hear this question, I'm not sure if they're asking if they were my first choice, or what kind of people have I approached for a donation like this. So I'm not sure how to answer that one.
How do you normally answer this question? What do you say to them?
Normally I just tell them I'd approach the people in my network, my family, and people that I know from church, because this project I was doing with the local community was just people around church, the people I'm used to. So when I went to start approaching people outside of the church, they started asking me who else I've approached for the same appeal. So I thought it was a tricky question. So
yes. So were these other potential donors, were they companies or were they other people, individual donors?
Yes.
Companies.
Yes, they were companies. So
okay.
I didn't know if they were asking about their competitors or they were asking if I was the first choice. They were my first choice. Yeah.
Okay, stay unmuted. Let me just respond to this one. I might have another question as a follow on. But okay, so you started something in your community, in your church group, and then the companies were saying, who else have you approached for this? I think the reason why they asked that question is, number one, to see what the sustainability of this project would be. Companies generally, their motivation for giving would be different to someone who's in the community and maybe wanting to support people that they know. A company's motivation would be, can this prove that we are good citizens? Can we use this in our marketing? And also they have constraints in terms of what they can support. So if their CSI projects are only around science and maths, and your project is around community upliftment, they might not be able to, because of their internal requirements that they have. So the best way that you can answer this question is to showcase, okay, yes, we have actually got community support and we are approaching corporates like yourself, and then mention other corporates that you will be planning to go to, even if you haven't yet gone to them. They just want to see if you have a plan around what you're doing. So sometimes if you can tell them about who else you want to approach, and if they can actually support the idea, they might want to get in on it first, so that they can say, okay, we'll support you, don't ask my competitor. Or they might want to see that other people have, and then they will kind of join in. So with that question, I would always kind of just mark them as a prospect to always come back to, even if they say no initially. Say, well, thank you for your time. We're going to keep approaching other corporates like yourself, and maybe you have opportunity to support us next year. Never ever, just close the door and never go back. Always keep the door open. Does it answer your question, or is there something else you want to ask me related to that?
No, I have been answered. I was wary of mentioning that I'm here to approach other companies, so I think I'll try it now.
So tell me a bit more about your project.
Okay, mostly it's about supporting school-going kids with the extras of going to school, like the toiletries and just extras besides the school fees and
Okay, so you were
and
asking
food that they
for
get to
like
school.
sponsorships of products itself.
Yes.
Okay, and always when you are asking for a sponsorship of product, you have to show how you will be able to market their donation so that they get their kind of publicity miles out of it, right? So you want to say, hey, on our website that we have, we're going to be showcasing our corporate sponsors. We also have these social media platforms where we will acknowledge our donations. So that way you'll be able to get a bit more leverage just to show them how it's going to be beneficial to them to actually support you. Happy?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes.
Awesome. Another question here is, do donors also check one's idea profile, like social media presence, whether I mark the initiative? Can this person unmute? Tishiyamo? I'm not saying it correctly.
Tiamo.
That's
Yes.
great. Okay. So tell me a bit more about this question. What do you mean by that?
Do I need to like market my idea? For instance, the idea of the youth center was my idea. So
oh, great! I've been using your idea the whole time.
So I actually don't know whether do I have to like go on social media, create some profiles for this program that I actually want to start, the project that I want to start.
Where do you want to start the youth center?
I actually want to do it there's like a youth there's a hall around my village, so that's where I could actually start it, but then I don't know where to start. But at the moment I've been like assisting students around from my home using my own laptop at home. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a website currently talking about your initiative?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right. So who are you thinking about approaching?
I actually didn't know whom to approach, but so far I've actually been approaching like I've been talking to the people that I went to university with and people who actually went to university around the village to assist with their laptops as well. Like we sort of we just convene together at home and then we just help out students.
So this is more like a kind of tutoring thing at the moment, but you want to build it into a kind of bigger youth center. Okay. So I'm giving you some of the advice that I gave to, who was I speaking to earlier? Yamkela, is to, you're building a kind of step-by-step process. You're starting small with the idea of scalability, okay? So I would recommend that you perhaps do a very cheap, like a kind of Wix website.
Sorry?
You create a website like on Wix or something, for example, a free website, just a one-pager to say this is what you're trying to do, because what you want to be building is some kind of presence around your idea. So you always can be evolving this, but the fact that you are actually doing stuff already and using your own laptop, right? Find a way that you can talk about this and actually create the idea for the youth center as well on the website, because people are going to be persuaded by the fact that you already are actively doing something. Okay, and then from there you can build it. So even with your the people that are supporting you and helping you with their tutoring and their laptops, right? That's a really compelling way to start building some narrative around, hey, we are doing something about this issue. This is why it's important to us. One day we'd love to have a youth center, but for now, this is how you can support this initiative. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, one more question and then we'll get back into the presentation. When you received more than expected, do you have to return the excess or use it? Alma, can you please unmute? I need to ask you about this. You have too much money. So Alma, what is behind this question? I want to just understand a bit more. So you have received donation.
Yes.
So how did you get more than you asked for?
So this is a question that's in regards to something that happened in the past, actually. It happened in 2016 when I was raising funds to go to a United Nations summit. And I was raising funds within my community, using those who knew me and my networks and everything. And it was supposed to be 80,000. Yes. And I think I ended up raising up 85,000. Okay. So I got to a stage where I wasn't sure if I was supposed to return the money back, but then at the same time, I didn't know who had actually sent money, as in the individuals.
Yeah.
So do you inform people that you've received more than you expected, or do you keep it silent?
What do you think, Alma?
I think it would be good to inform people that you've received more than, and I guess find some way of using the excess if you can't return it back.
See, always trust yourself, my dear. You know exactly the answer. So especially because you don't know who gave what, right? Because did you use a kind of online platform like
Yes.
Thunderfund or something? Yeah. They should be able to give you a report of, well, depending on the platform. I know not all of them work the same, but like, for example, on Given Gain, you can see that anonymous maybe gave 5,000. So if you're someone who's anonymous, it means that they don't want you to know who gave the money. So yeah, then it is difficult. But I think it is, like you said, for you to have integrity is to say, thank you so much for your support. I actually received more than what I needed, and this is how I was able to use the excess, because you want to be able to go back to these people the next time you have an appeal, right? And if they can see that, yes, she is trustworthy, and she's so honest that she even told us that she had extra, then they will be more likely to give. And next time, ask for more than 80,000. Then I would make it 100,000. And then say, oh, if I get extra, I'll be able to use it to help others or support someone else who also wants to go. So it's always great when you get more than what you ask for. Thank you, Alma. Tinashe is asking, is it recommended to have competing firms or companies in your donor mix? Tinashe, can you unmute quickly? Tinashe, when you say competing companies, what do you mean? Okay, I'm not sure if Tinashe is there, but essentially, if you are going to be targeting companies, they are going to be competitors. As long as you're not building something where their engagement is going to be in conflict of each other, you want to be able to approach as many corporates that want to support as you can. So we've got half an hour left. We're going to go back into the presentation and we're going to cover grant funding basics as well as storytelling. But before we do that, let's have a quick body break, 2-minute break, and we'll be back in 2 minutes. Okay, everybody, just half an hour to go. Thank you for sticking around and being engaged. I hope this is helping you to get some good elements and some good advice on how to build this life-changing organization. So, grant funding. This is a very, very big topic, and I just want to go into some basics of this so that we can cover this perhaps in a bit more detail for next year sometime. But essentially, when it comes to grant funding, like we shared in the previous sessions, you want to make sure that you are not putting all of your hopes and all of your time and activity into just one big funder. Big funders are great. They can enable a lot. So depending on what your actual organization is going to be doing and who your target is and how much money you actually need to be able to create the change you're wanting to create, the grant funding option might be for you or not for you. If it is for you, this is a kind of quick four-step process on how you would go about grant funding. So firstly, identifying grant opportunities. Where do you identify them? So you would need to create or find databases of grants, grant funders internationally, and start building a database around this. So Google search is your friend. You also have some paid platforms that can give you updates of grant funding applications that have opened up. So these are for, I think, fundraising teams and universities who have the capacity and the resources to be able to build that. So calls for proposals will be advertised on an annual basis or on a regular basis. So you want to be able to be aware of that. If you are going to be going into research and looking at research funding, obviously going to your university research office will be helpful because they will have the latest information about calls for proposals and requests for proposals. So that's really where you're kind of going to be looking at, is there something that matches what I'm trying to be able to achieve? And if there is a funding window, you have maybe about a month or 2 months or 3 months, depending on the complexity of the projects that they will be funding, where you can actually put together a funding proposal. Something else I want to mention is key networks. Often it's about people who are in the space that will have more information around it. So try and build some networks of people who you know have had experience in the space before, because they will be able to help you with identifying when these proposals actually and requested proposals are actually activated. So that's the first thing, is identifying these opportunities. And in times of crisis or unprecedented times, like with what we're facing with COVID at the moment, these calls for proposals or funding opportunities can be shut down, and has been, because a lot of the funding is now shifted to a different area. Again, this is why you don't want to only have grant funding as part of your donor mix. So let's say you do have a call for proposal that matches what you're trying to achieve, and also that you meet their criteria. It's very important to not ignore the criteria for funding, because you don't want to spend all your time compiling a very detailed proposal and they decline you because you don't meet their criteria at all. So if you have any questions around whether or not you do qualify for funding, there probably will be a place where you can get for the clarity of criteria. So make sure you clarify that first before you go around and submit your application. So let's move on to creating a case for support or building the actual application. Your case for support is, if we go back to what we initially looked at in the beginning, is really what it is that you're trying to achieve. So looking at your plan and your purpose, we go through that again. When they ask you for the proposal, they just really want to see this. They want to see, what is your idea to change the world? What problem are you trying to solve? Who are you and why are you doing this? And you want to showcase your passion with that. What is your plan? This is the most important part when it comes to a grant funder, is they want to see the plan. They want to know who are the people behind this. Do they have the expertise? Do they have the aptitude for what they want to actually achieve? And the plan is going to be something that they interrogate. So you can't just go in with a very vague application. It has to be detailed. They're going to even probably go in and ask for even more detailed on, for example, your funding models or your log frames and different aspects of the theory of change models. So it's very, very detailed. And they want to see what impact are you going to be creating at the end of the day. So fundamentally, when you are looking at grant funding applications, that's what you're going to be sending them. You're going to be sending them your idea of how you're going to be changing the world and why they should support you with that. So yeah, like I said, it's basically your business plan. They will have very specific templates that they create. So it might also mean that you would have to shift all of your materials into their specific templates, depending on the actual funder. And what they would need to see is collaboration with other organizations like yours. They generally don't want to support a single small organization when they could actually provide that support to a larger network of an organization. So even with universities, there's often joint funding applications that happen. Like, for example, UP and WITS would submit an application to do a specific research project because they want to be able to see that you can collaborate and use the networks and resources that are available in your area. Also, it brings together the expertise of different people working on the same problem. So that's something to keep in mind when you are going to be applying for grant funding. Submitting the application, I would say that you need to get help on this. It's not something that you should be doing on your own because there's a lot of details in it. You want to be able to showcase the team that you're going to be working with, because you also can't just do this project on your own. So you want to be able to have this be a joint project. So perhaps assign different sections of the proposal to your team. I think that's going to be helpful. In a fundraising office in university, that's what happens anyway. The proposal writer starts with it, and then the actual fundraiser goes to work, speak to the project manager, and get more details around how things work. And normally there's one person assigned to the specific funder so that they're able to know what the funder requires in building that relationship. So it definitely is a team effort when it comes to grant funding. So, and then there's a waiting game, right? So don't expect, if you're going to be looking at grant funding, to have the money come in overnight. It's a process. It could take a year, even 2 years, for the grant funding from application to actual approval to actually getting the money in. They often will also pay in tranches of funding as well. So you're not going to just get, like, if you apply for 10 million, for example, on a project, you won't just get 10 million paid to you upfront. They're going to give you the first amount that you need to get started or to continue your project in the beginning. Then you will have to submit a report. And if they are happy with the fact that you are using the money for what you say you're going to use it for, in the way that you say you're going to be using it for, then they will give you the second part of it. And so that's why report writing is an essential part of the grant funding experience, because these are the way that they get to see that the project is actually aligning. They often will plan as part of the approval of you getting the grant funding, if it is a big project, to actually maybe visit the project, or for you to send regular updates around that. Never ever miss the deadlines when it comes to report writing. If you do, you probably won't get the rest of the money, or you will not be funded in the future. So try and assign responsibilities around the report writing. If it's something, for example, if you have a national project or an international project, like a few countries that you're going to be working with, people in different countries, then you want to be able to give them deadlines to say, give me the report of this activity by this date, and plan in advance. Never leave your report writing for the grant funding to the last minute, because then you will miss the deadline, and you're going to have to explain why to the funder. And what you want to always make sure you do with grant funders is be ahead of the game always, because if you can prove that you can be a trustworthy project leader, you will be most likely to get repeat funding, and for them to perhaps recommend you to other potential funders, even if they aren't able to fund you for a specific year. So that's grant funding in a nutshell. I know I did a drive-by with that one. But essentially, the most effective way to do something is just do it. Whether or not you get grant funding, just start the project, build it slowly, build it up in stages. If you get grant funding and you're able to kind of make a massive push on a project, awesome, that's great. But build a contingency plan, because you don't want to just kind of only work on the grant funder. Before we go to the last session, in the last 15 minutes, I want you to write down what are the thoughts and emotions coming up during this training for me. Am I feeling excited about my project? Am I feeling that this is all daunting? Am I feeling like perhaps I need to change my focus? Write down what it is that's coming up for you, because it's important to reflect on what it's going to take to lead this initiative, to build a business, to create this organization, to make an impact in the world. It is messy, so write it down so that you can start building a practice of reflecting on how you can take things forward. If you're feeling excited, that's a great sign that you're on the right track. If you're feeling anxious and fearful, that's okay. Fundraising or creating a business is not easy, but you're going to take it step by step, okay? You're going to get there. So write down what's coming up for me. If we had more time, if I had a whole day with you guys in a room, we would definitely unpack this a bit more. So yeah, just for now, write it down in your safe diary. Okay, and this is my favorite part of fundraising. This is something that if you really want to be an effective fundraiser, and actually if you want to be an effective business owner, you have to become amazing at communicating. Wherever you are right now in terms of your communication levels, you need to be able to build that, expand on that, and strengthen that, because in your business or in an NPO or in your life, you need to be able to become a public person and communicate your ideas well, so that people understand what it is that you are about and why you do what you do, and then they can support what you do. So life is not scripted, and conversations with our donors should not be either. So let's just talk about the Move for Food campaign at Salombas University. Okay, the campaign was started to help create, to help get food for students who were unable to actually get food during the time of when their funding was not able to be confirmed. So NSFA students, they normally only get their funding confirmed around March. Meanwhile, they're on campus from around February. So they face food insecurity during that time. And also around the exam period, when it's very crucial, they are unable to actually get, or they kind of run out of their funding by that time. And so at the time when they should actually be focusing on the exams, they actually are facing food insecurity as well. So even at a university like Stellenbosch, where people would think that there is ample resources available, there were still students on campus who were going hungry. And so how do you tell that story to potential donors in a way that protects the dignity of students? So when it comes to storytelling and looking at how do you show the impact around what you're trying to do, you want to always make sure that you're protecting the people that you're trying to support. So the youth center, right? There might be some privacy issues around how you are actually showing people's faces, especially if they're children especially if you're doing work with children, you want to be aware of what you can and can't say. So we obviously couldn't talk about students or name students who were hungry, because that would obviously be a horrible way to approach the story, right? But you want to be able to show and not tell donors what the problem is. Often the mistake that we make when we're communicating to a donor to support our cause is that we tell them how amazing we are. And universities specifically have make this mistake a lot. It says we are the #1 in this, and we are the top university in that, and we are awesome. And that's great, but how does that affect the donor? So you want to be able to create a story in a way that creates an emotional connection with your donor. Okay, give them a problem that they can solve. Often we get so used to the kind of just we fall into our normal ways that we are telling stories or communicating, but we never really show what the impact is going to be. So let's take the youth center, for example. How would we tell that story? We would talk about why is there a need for this youth center to be there? What is lacking in the lives of these young people? So you have to kind of show what would happen, what would be what is the current scenario without the donor supporting. So, for example, young people are unable to get the right marks for best in science. They aren't able to pass, and they can't get access to university, which means that they stay at home. And this is the impacts of youth unemployment. So why should a donor care about this, right? You want to be able to build a story. So say, for example, Sarah has a dream to be a doctor. So you want to make it very personal. It doesn't have to be her real name. Sarah has a dream to be a doctor because she saw her mom die of a heart attack at 5 years old, and she wasn't able to get to the hospital on time because the ambulance never came to the community. So you want to build a compelling story that takes the donor into this reality, right? And show them that this is what the reality can be if they support Sarah in her journey. So Sarah wants to be a doctor because she saw her mom die of a heart attack when she was 5 years old because the ambulance never came in time. But Sarah is unable to get the right marks that she needs for maths because she doesn't have a tutor. This is where we come in. We're helping to tutor her in maths and science so that she can make the university requirement and study at UP is Salombas University to become a doctor. So you want to pull in the donor into, if you support our initiative to tutor young students in this community, people like Sarah can actually become a doctor and make sure that she saves other people from heart attacks. So I'm just using a kind of very vague example, but you want to be able to build storytelling into everything that you're doing. So you want to make sure that the donor is the hero of the story. Never ever tell them what you're doing. You are the guide into this problem. So you're the one who is inspiring change. And you're taking them into this world where perhaps they've been part of this world. So you obviously want to target people that can have a connection. But remember that your donor group is very different, right? So if you may be talking, let's say this is your corporate donor. The way that you pitch to your corporate donor, the story you tell to your corporate donor is going to be one about how their involvement can help a community, and as a good corporate citizen, this helps to build their brand. Okay, you want to maybe talk about this lady who also perhaps lost her mom at 5 of a heart attack, who is currently a doctor, how she can support this organization so that other doctors can come into, can also achieve their dreams. So you want to be able to look at who is in my donor mix and how do I pitch the story to each person. This story will be a bit more individual and more personal connection, and this one would obviously maybe show how the corporate can be invested in this community and how it's good for them. So make sure you research how you can connect with them the best, and make sure that you help them to see that without you, Sarah will not be able to fulfill her dream. So the donor has to be the one that helps to be the solution to this problem. So you want to make them feel something, whether you make them feel angry or sad or happy or inspired, but you want to make them feel something. You want to help them to connect to what it is that you want to do. This guy, Alan Clayton, if you can try and get some of his resources, he's a really great fundraiser based in the UK, and he does amazing master classes. He said Martin Luther King didn't get up 50 years ago and say, I have a budget and a plan. He said, I have a dream. You want to inspire people and show them why. So this is where your passion comes in. This is where you're showing people how they can get connected and how they can be involved. Because this is something I really learned being in the space for a long time, is that people generally do want to do good. People want to give money. They want to support. They want to make the world a better place. They just don't know how to give, and they don't know where to give. So that's the approach I go into. I go into any kind of fundraising or donor experience with generally a positive outlook, so that abundance outlook, like this person actually wants to make a difference. They actually want to give. I have a friend of mine who is extremely generous, and she supported every single initiative I've had. Even on my birthday, I do birthday appeals to people, so they don't buy me gifts, but I tell them to please support an organization called A21 that is, I'm not sure if you know about A21, but they invested in abolishing slavery. So they do a lot of work around sex trafficking, and they're also active in South Africa. And so I would do this appeal every birthday annually, and people give. They give because they care about what I care about. And so you want to be able to also connect with people that if they don't give to you directly, and I give to them directly as well, but you want to also build a way that you're empowering your current donors to connect to their network as well. When I ran in the marathon, people may not have really cared about Stellenbosch University, for example, but they cared about me and the passion that I had. So as you're building your contingency plans and building your donor mix, also make sure that you can help empower your current donors to become your champions and help them to expand into your networks, because you will not be able to tap into the networks that they have, but you'll be able to get a lot more new donors coming in because of someone else's appeals. And once they do come in, make sure you have a plan to connect them to the organization and to actually steward them across the donor cycle. So becoming individual donors that give regularly. You want to try and make sure people can give annually via debit order, especially individual donors, so that you can start building a kind of budgeting system in your organization. But these individual donors then eventually become your major donors. And I'm getting ahead of myself there. So we have 5 minutes left. It's felt like I said a lot in the last 2 hours. We're going to go into closing questions now before we break, and then go into our bonus session. If you want a certificate for this training course, I'm going to be sending a link to the MasterCard team. And if you complete the evaluation by next week Friday, I will send you, I will email you a certificate for this course. So I'm going to quickly go back into our discussion and see if we have any closing questions. Any questions before we end this session? Any comments? How's everybody feeling? Yolanda, you can unmute your mic.
Hello.
How are you, Yolanda? How did you find this last session? Was it interesting? Are you scared? Are you excited? How are you feeling?
I think I'm feeling a little bit of everything. I've learned a lot that I know. So I'm excited about what I've learned, but there's also a lot that I need to change. So yeah, I'm feeling good.
Okay, fundraising is an art, and having a business is an art and a science. So, yeah, it's a start. It's a good start. Do you have any questions?
No, I think I've gotten a lot of information right now. So
That's all I know. Information overload. I understand.
you.
Thank you, Landa. Regan, I'm going to ask you, how did you feel about the session? You can unmute. Regan, are you there? Okay, there's a comment here. I love the last session about storytelling. Seems like an art to do more often. It is. It's a practice to be able to create communication that is emotive. But once you start doing that and seeing the results, you won't do it any other way. Okay, so it doesn't seem like we have any other questions. I think I gave you too much information. In our evaluation, I have included some questions around what other types of training. This was just a kind of broad overview. I tried to cover as much as I could, but obviously it's taken me 15 years to learn these things. There's not much I can give you other than what I have done over this past 2 hours. So in the training evaluation, please also note down other sessions that you'd like us to go a bit more in depth about. I know something that probably would be relevant and practical is how to actually write a proposal, because that takes an art as well. How to build some social media around this, and just kind of how to build it step by step. I think that's going to be valuable. Linux or FA, are you still on the call? I'm not sure if there's anything else you want me to answer.
Yeah, we're still on the call. I just had a question really from an entrepreneurship point of view. Talking about the J12 option for venture capitalists when you're looking for funding.
Sorry, what option, Linux?
The J12 option, the venture capitalist route way of investing, seeking finance. I find it's very difficult to find, finance at a startup level with venture capitalists, unless if they're really designed for startups, but it's very challenging because there isn't really market proof and stuff like that. So I don't know if you could just speak to that for a little bit.
Okay, I will. I think, yes, it is difficult to create that startup funding for an organization or a business. And the best way that people recommend you to do a business development, Seth Godin, other people, would be to kind of, get a normal job where you can develop your skill set, build up your business while you are working. And I've done it also myself. There's a really good book called The 10% Entrepreneur by, can't remember his name right now, Patrick McGinnis. The 10% Entrepreneur by Patrick McGinnis, and he talks about how you can build your entrepreneurship venture while you actually are in formal employment, and why that actually is beneficial for your actual job. Startup funding is difficult because you also are beholden to the actual funder, and also if it's a loan, you have to pay it back. So I try to dissuade people from getting into debt. Scalability, I think, is important. So if you can learn to live kind of on a very strict budget, and build your business kind of from the ground up, maybe over a longer period of time, you're going to actually learn a lot more about developing your business, testing out your model, seeing what works, building up your clientele, building up your reputation. So unfortunately, it's not a popular answer, but the long-term strategy is generally what is going to be the most lasting. Dr. Effa, you wanted to perhaps say something and maybe close up the call? I am going to continue on the bonus session. So Linux, don't end the call. But Dr. Effa, you wanted to maybe say goodbye to everybody who doesn't want to stay for the bonus session?
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for taking out time. Like I told my scholars, this is really, really, really a good opportunity to learn about the way the world is going. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm not trying to rig the election. I'm just saying, guys, think about proposal writing when you're filling in those forms. That would be another nice workshop for us to have. It's an added skill. We don't know where life will take us. Look at the pandemic. Some of us might go into businesses, have our own business ventures. Some of us might work in international organizations. We might have to solicit for funds. So please, guys, not that I'm campaigning. Thank you for your time, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ife. Okay, so we're going to be staying on this call for the bonus session, which is what does it take to make a good fundraiser? So those of you who'd like to stick around, you're welcome to do so. Those of you who really have to go have lunch, go see your significant other, do something else, do some laundry, that's also fine. You will get the recording. But those who are going to stay, do not end on this call, don't leave the call. We're going to take a quick 2-minute break and then come back for our last session. Okay, everybody, we are back. Thank you for these brave souls who are with me on this last session. I had to share this because I am so excited to be talking to potential fundraisers of the future, business owners of the future. And so these are the things that I wish that someone told me when I first started out on my fundraising journey. So what does it take to be a great fundraiser? Essentially, yeah, fundraisers come in different forms. That's all I want to say to begin with. But essentially, you have to have purpose. And we spoke about this in our earlier session. If you have a very strong sense of a personal mission, if you know, okay, my life work on this planet is to work with young people and to inspire women, which is mine, that's going to help to drive everything that you do. So even if you are working for a job and you may not be directly doing this key work that you feel is your purpose, you will find the work that you tend to gravitate towards, the things that you tend to want to volunteer for, the things that you feel passionate about. In our purpose sessions with our training, we talk about what makes you mad, sad, or glad. These are all indications of what is linked to your purpose. So purpose and passion are keys that can help you to drive your personal mission and your personal vision. Like I said before we ended the previous session, communication is key. So if you are a good communicator, and I mean writing, in-person communication, speaking, being able to pull together a way that people can engage, right? So if you have a gift for communication, you're going to be a great fundraiser, because this is something that I never thought I would do. You know, I didn't get up one day and think, hey, I want to be a fundraiser. At school, I just knew that I was good at writing. I wasn't able to even get a bursary to study, even though I was accepted to go to WITS. And so I just figured out, okay, I'll do communication via NISA, which I did. But my experience of doing press releases and annual reports and articles, it slowly built up a communication expertise around creating compelling content around things that I was passionate about. So this is something that even if you maybe don't feel like you are good at, you can start to learn how to just get a bit more intentional about the way that you communicate something. Find people that are really good at communicating, that inspire you, that make you want to kind of listen more and study what they do. Figure out how to become a great communicator. The fourth aspect of becoming a great fundraiser is accepting the call to leadership. Okay, if you're going to be a leader, people often maybe shy away from that because they don't see themselves as a leader, but you are a leader in your own life, right? So we are a leader regardless. And there's maybe not all the best examples of leadership out there in the world, and maybe that's why we are afraid to lean into that. But if you want to create impact in the world, starting a youth center, eradicating poverty, giving back to your community, helping your family members, that takes leadership. Leadership is influence, and everything rises and falls on leadership. So I would say you should lean into the call to leadership. John Maxwell has some amazing resources around that. There's some great leaders that can inspire us. If you're going to be communicating for a message, for change, for a cause, you'll have to embrace leadership in all of its forms. And that takes courage, which is my next one. Courage to lead, courage to speak up, courage to say, hey, things are not good here. This is not the way things should be. We need to change things. And then employing creativity around how can we find solutions to these problems. I, for example, experienced domestic violence growing up. I didn't know that I was learning how to be codependent. I had an abusive partner in my early 20s. I experienced sexual violence in terms of a rape at 17. I was in a cult, and a religious cult in my 20s. And only now in my late 30s, early 40s, have I been able to have the courage to speak up. So depending on where you are at the moment in your life journey, these things are all shaping who you are. And even if you have experienced negative things in your life, they can shape you, but never ever let it define you. So the things that you're most likely going to be passionate about are the ones that have affected you personally. And so never be afraid to allow that personal story to shine through, because people will believe you. We talk about authenticity. They'll believe you because you've experienced it, and that's why you want to bring a change. So it takes time to perhaps own your entire story. It took me a long time to really own it, but once you do, you come up with the courage to lead and to speak up and to be an agent of change. So you're on that journey, and I applaud you for that. Okay, so do I have what it takes to be a fundraiser? Like I said, most people kind of fall into fundraising. If you have to go into the UP fundraising office and ask the fundraisers there, how did you get into fundraising? They will probably say, I fell into it. In South Africa, fundraising is not really a career path that people can pursue, or it's not a kind of familiar career path that people can pursue. If you go to the UK or the US, it's definitely something that people almost choose as a career, or they get into voluntarily because it's much more established in terms of a formal profession. Okay, so there actually are fundraising opportunities in universities or other NPOs. If you look at a website called NGO Pulse, you will find fundraising opportunities there. So I'd advise you to have a look at that website and see what are some of the fundraising roles that are currently available. It might be something you want to consider, even as you finish your postgrad studies at the moment, just to learn about the NGO space, just to learn about how can I use my expertise in terms of bringing social change. Okay. Also, starting with where you are and what you have. Like I said, I didn't really plan to go into fundraising. When I started out at the blood service, my role there was a communication executive, and I would write donor profiles. I would be part of these donor blood donation drives. I work with media. And that's really where I started. That's really where I began to see the power of people giving back, the power of people being selfless, the power of donors who really cared. You know, and I really enjoyed doing that kind of work. So even when I wasn't doing that work, I would often volunteer or gravitate towards that. And so essentially what I want to encourage you to do is to become a lifelong student of giving. So why do people give? What motivates people to give? And also be open to learning and different experiences. One example I wanted to give in my early sessions was a company. They are an international manufacturer, an international brand. I won't say who they are, but essentially, initially they wanted to give about 400,000 towards bursaries, and then the one day they wanted me to go to their office in Roslyn in Pretoria. So I had to drive there with the UP vehicle, do the late meeting. It wasn't very clear what they wanted. I drove back to the university. I had to give back the car, and then eventually get home, sit in traffic. I got home at like 7 o'clock, and I was like, oh, I hope this meeting wasn't for nothing. You know, it was a long, cumbersome process. But essentially, 2 months later, they called to say that they wanted to give 4 million to bursaries because they weren't able to connect with any other institution that could receive that money. So you know, each experience is going to be something that you can grow in. So from that, I always learned that no experience is ever wasted. Every time that you engage with a funder, there's a learning to be had. And so I've also always learned to answer the phone, to be available. Often people would give towards a specific cause is because I actually got back to them. I actually called them and asked them how we can support them. And they said, well, you know, we phoned 3 or 4 different universities. You're the only one that phoned back. So yeah, be active and be proactive in that sense. I just want to remind you again that the way that you see fundraising is really going to be influencing your passion around it. You are not a beggar. You're not a professional beggar pleading for support. You actually are a matchmaker, and you are able to facilitate meaningful connections and create shared value. So what I really enjoyed in my time at universities was after having to do a very cumbersome CETA application process. Oh my gosh, I hated those. It was a long process. We had to get speak to the faculty, and we had to get all this information and put together and I'm not an admin person, but what I would see as a result of all this hard work was a student who was maybe so anxious and worried that he wasn't able to study this year, being able to see the relief on their face, that wow, I can study this year, you know. And also most people don't realize that most students who are on funding, they don't just get one funder for the 4 years. There's like multiple funders, and each year it's a whole process, you know. So I found the thing that made me come alive. I found the reason why I was doing it, and it was for helping students who were needing to study or needing money to study, to actually study and get their degree. And it's something that I never got when I was younger. So that was something that really helped me to be motivated. And whenever I would be stuck on an admin task and kind of procrastinating, I would remind myself, but like, wait, if I send in this application, it's going to result in 50 students getting money. And so that motivated me to do work I didn't like, to actually get the result that made me find meaning at the end of the day. So let's talk about frustration, because fundraising can be frustrating, as can running your own business be frustrating, because things take longer than you think it would be. It is a lot of work to build up a network, to build in your practices, to actually understand how things work. It's a lot of trial and error, and that can be very daunting. So you often will be thinking about how to develop resilience, how to hear the no, and then to make the next call or see the next donor with the same amount of enthusiasm. And the way that I've been able to see it over the years, and even I use the same things in my business as well, is you see it as sowing a seed in the ground. You never know which one is going to bear fruit. Like the example I told you about with the company who initially gave us 400,000, was quiet for a couple of months, and then suddenly there was a call for 4 million. If I never answered that phone call initially, if I never drove and faced the inconvenience of having the face-to-face meeting, I probably would not have been able to get the 4 million, you know. And so just keep doing the right things day after day. It can seem mundane, like no one's there to really be excited about the day-to-day work that you do, but that is actually what's going to give you results at the end of the day. And also, if you expect it to be difficult, then it's a lot easier to deal with, because you realize that it's not just a walk in the park. Yes, it is challenging, but when you face the difficulties, find ways to actually just realize that I'm doing this to achieve this effort, I'm doing this to help this person, and that's what's going to drive you to keep doing what you need to do. So like I said, finding your fundraiser fuel, for me, it was knowing that I'm helping students like myself. That motivated me to go to work every day. Working in universities can be very bureaucratic. There's a lot of red tape. So, you know, there's a lot of challenges that I faced in that. But being able to, for example, have this high net worth donor meet the VC and like have this appreciation lunch, I knew that I was part of that. Also, fundraisers generally are kind of behind the scenes, so you kind of do all of the work to make other people look better and take the glory. And so that's something you're going to have to make peace with, is that you will do all this background grinding and foundational work, but that's great, because if other people can get the glory, like the donor and the beneficiary, that is what you're working towards, right? So play to your strengths. If you are not an admin person like me, and you need to motivate yourself to do it, find a way to motivate yourself, or get help to do those parts you don't like to do. You will have to be the one to make the ask. You can't outsource that. The more you make the ask, the more you get comfortable with asking people and engaging those conversations, the better able you'll be able to have those opportunities in the future. And remember that you are the potential to change somebody's story. I know that my time at university was awesome for me, but I know that I've also helped hundreds of students to be able to get their qualification and change their life. And they might not know all of them that it was me. There were a few that obviously you get to know them and you become friends with them, and they're still part of my life. And so, yeah, it's powerful. It's a powerful thing to be a fundraiser and to affect people's destinies. It's a way that you can pay things forward, right? So even though I didn't get funding to study, I felt it was a bit of poetic justice for me to do that. And so a great fundraiser is really fueled by a sense of purpose and mission and vision, and they get a kick out of doing something good, even if they are behind the scenes. They kind of like, no, I've done that, you know. You are creating a legacy, and you'll actually be surprised at what you can accomplish. I did not ever think about, if you had asked me when I started out working at UJ, in when was it, 2009, I would never have thought that I would have been able to accomplish the things I did, creating campaigns around bursaries, you know, helping students to have food, to actually have support, to see them come alive. I mean, yeah, that was awesome for me. So this is why I feel passionate about fundraising. I think that there isn't enough support for potential fundraisers, and we actually lose a lot of good people that could actually be equipped to be in this space, because there isn't enough training and kind of awareness around it. So I want you to quickly write in your journal this answer to this question: what positive traits do I currently have that will help me to become an effective fundraiser? What positive traits do I currently have that will help me to be an effective fundraiser? If you are on this call still, then there's definitely a passion there inside of you. So what are these positive traits that I have that's going to make me effective? So I want to remind you of this. Every time you're thinking about making an ask, you have a 50% chance of getting a no, but you also have a 50% chance of getting a yes. And with the times that you do get the yes, I promise you, the excitement and the joy of getting a yes definitely gives you a fuel to make the next ask, or to at least have enough fuel to deal with some of the no's before the next yes. So I just want to encourage you that if you are considering this as a career path, or if you're seriously looking at how to build this to create an NPO, you're on the right track and you have what it takes. Give yourself time to grow, and you can do amazing things. And the world needs you. That's the most important thing. The world needs you to be great. So I'm just going to take any last final questions and comments. Yeah. Monica, do you have what it takes to be a fundraiser? You can unmute. Monica, are you there? Monica's not there. Tenzi, are you there? Can you unmute and tell us? Tenzi's not there. Okay. Do you have any questions? Let's maybe deal with any final questions. I think everyone's getting tired.
Sorry, hello.
Tenzi, you are there. Okay. Tenzi, do you have what it takes to be a fundraiser?
I have half of what it takes. I think I lack the motivational skills, like how to motivate the funders, you know, getting people on board on my idea. I find that very difficult.
Okay, let's interrogate your idea.
Work hard and all that.
Let's talk about your idea quickly. You've got like about 2-3 minutes. So what is your idea? What impact are you trying to make in the world?
Well, I'm very interested in environmental things. So I was like, back home, Eswatini, we don't have facilities that recycle plastics. Mm-hmm. But then again, plastics is not separated from the solid waste, just from the homes, the schools, and the towns. So town councils find it difficult to do the separation as well. So my thing was, if we could start from the high schools to donate these different bins that can separate the things that they throw out, the waste.
The waste, yes.
Yeah, so you have one for plastics that are recyclables, and then one for solid, and one for the ones that you are able to use as compost, because we also have some companies that use that waste for compost as well. So if you can be able to teach this to the students in high schools, and then go up then to those companies that also have who are in town, who also use the municipality for disposing their waste, and also have them to get on board and to buying these bins for themselves, and also separating from that point, so that when town council comes to pick that waste, it's already sorted, and then they'll be able to dispose it in different places instead of all being in one pile in the landfills and then having difficulty to decompose it.
So, my dear, you have a great plan, right? This is what I'm hearing, Tenzi. You really have thought about your plan. So I think it's just a process of around how do I cultivate the message around this? Because you said how do I motivate donors to give? It's more around how do I communicate this message, and who am I speaking to? Because what you're actually trying to accomplish, you need quite a few people to actually get in on this idea. You've got high schools, you have different elements. So start out with kind of writing down the full plan, and then identifying who are your key stakeholders, who are your key donor groups, and then how do you start actually building the communication message around this? Because it's something that I think a lot of people would want to support. They just need to know how. So you have to be very clear around each segment about what do I need? How can people support this? And then making sure they know exactly how to support. Often people will say, give money to this cause, but they don't say, where's the banking details? You can give this amount of money, making it easy for people to give. So I think in future sessions, we'll go more into those kind of details. But for right now, write down your plan, put it into segments, and then you can start seeing more clearly how you can communicate to your donors.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, guys, we've got 2 minutes left. Any final comments? Otherwise, I will let everybody go into their day. Nkubile, I've sent you the author's name. There you go.
Hello.
Dennis, yes.
Yes, just a comment, really.
Yeah.
I just want to thank you for this wonderful session.
You're welcome.
Really informative. There's a lot that I've picked from everything that you've said that I'm looking to apply in some of my plans going forward. So
yes, and you've got some funders now, so you're like on the next stage already, which is great.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Everybody, this was such a great session. I really wish I could all meet you in person. Maybe next year I can come to campus and we can see each other face to face. That would be awesome. Dr. Efe, are you still on the call? Thank you so much for this opportunity today. Is there anything final you want to add?
No, thank you so much. I want my colleague Bonolo to do the vote of thanks
Okay.
for us. Yes.
Wonderful.
Bonolo, are you there?
Indeed. How could I not be here? What?
Our baby face. Okay.
Yes, baby face.
What a great presentation. Thank you so much. This was insightful, valuable, and meaningful. I feel it wasn't just content that was reiterated. You added so many personal elements. I think you made it real to everyone. And I think that's really hard, especially when using this kind of platform. So thank you so much. I feel like there's a lot of thought that went into it. And the fact that we have people staying for this session is testament to, how enriching this has been. So just thank you so much. And also for everyone else to know that Cheryl did this on really short notice, like
a week.
Days before time. So I also think that speaks to, how you present yourself. And that in itself is a skill that I think a lot of our scholars can take just by how you model, this confidence that one needs. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I think you can tell I love students and I miss students. So this is great for me.
I think we would be happy to engage with you further, at a later stage, but we'll be in touch.
Definitely.
Thank you so much. Awesome.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a lovely Saturday.
Thanks, you too.
Thank
Bye,
you,
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Efe. Bye.
Bye.